Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter, and this is Cookies and Canvas for Kids. All right, so today we're going to be painting Coyote Sunset. I'm going to be eating some walnut chocolate chip cookies. So let's paint our canvas and eat our cookies. All right, so for the materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 canvas. You can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'm going to be using. I will be using acrylic paint today. The colors are titanium white, deep yellow, burnt sienna, which I'll call rust, fire red, and Mars black. Of course you can switch those up, but that's what I'm going to be using. For tools today, I'm going to be using a number 2 pencil. I'm using 3 brushes. I've got a 1/2 inch wide bristle brush, a number 8 round brush, and a number 1 round brush, and I will refer to these as small, medium, and large. You're going to need a cup of water for washing your brushes and a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, I'm going to be providing you with a couple of additional resources that you can use. One of them is a link where you could purchase this entire kit. It has the same paint I'm using, the same brushes, so it's convenient and affordable, so that's there. But what also is there is a downloadable image of the final painting. That's free. You can print that at any time and use it as a visual reference as you go along. There's also written step-by-step instructions that you can use. And the most important thing that I have down in the description is a recipe for my delicious walnut chocolate chip cookies. And that's all we're going to need today. All right, so what we're doing for the first step is we are outlining our rocky hills. So on the left-hand side, I'm going to come down about halfway and make myself a mark. And then on the right side, I'm going to come down about 1/4 of the way. And to know where that is, you can visually kind of figure out where the halfway point is and then go half the distance between that and the top. And that's going to give you about 1/4 of the way. Make yourself another mark. And now we're going to connect these two with a jaggedy type of line. So this is meant to resemble rocks or little cliffs or little hills. It can be any kind of formation that you want. It can have flat surfaces or pointy surfaces. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of start with a little bit of a flat line, and then maybe I'm just going to come down, maybe go back up, and maybe do another little bump or whatever. And I'm just going to have fun. I'm going to maybe come up a little bit more, maybe do another little, I don't know, go up a little bit, maybe then there's a little bit of a cliff or something, then maybe I come back up. So really just have fun with however you want this to look. Maybe there's another kind of cool rock there, and then I'm going to do this again for a second set of rocky hills, but this time I want it to look different than this one. So I'm going to have different kind of starting points. I'm going to come down from this one, maybe about 2 inches, and make myself a mark. And then on this side, I'm going to come about halfway between here and here. So somewhere maybe right around here. So they're almost the same left to right. If they are the same, great. If not, no worries. And then what I'm going to do is just kind of make myself a fun another set of rocks. So this is kind of meant to resemble, like if you ever went to the Southwest in the United States, they have all these cool rock formations. There's out in the desert kind of area, they've got so many neat things. There's monuments and stuff that are made out of rock, so it's really a cool place. And that's all I'm going to do for that step. We're going to use our big brush for the next step, so you can take that out and get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for this step is we are painting the sky. I'm going to use my large bristle brush, and the colors I'm using are rust, red, yellow, and white. For me, I am creating the sky to resemble a sunset. So just imagine yourself in a hot place with a beautiful sunset happening. I'm going to have my sun over here, and I'm going to have the darkest area up the top. And what I do is I'm going to start from the top, work my way over to the left and the right, keeping this spot without paint on it, and then at the end we'll put the sun in and get it to blend in with the rest. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to start with all three rust, red, and yellow on my brush at the same time. No white, just these three colors to start. I'm going to start up at the tippy top of my canvas. I like to paint the top edge of my canvas and all the way around the edges, so that way my painting looks nice and complete. And I'm just using a left to right brush stroke. Once I've come into the canvas, you can see how dark it is right now. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start picking up yellow. And what will happen, I don't wash my brush. What's going to happen is my sky will naturally get brighter and brighter as it comes down, using the remnants of the rust and the red that are on there. I want to keep in mind that I'm going to keep this area over here kind of reserved for my sun. So you can come right down to your hill, but keep in mind you want to keep some of this area around here for what's going to be your sun. So when I do come down about halfway into the sky over here, I will, oops, I just picked up a little bit of red, that's okay. I will start using white. So now the white is going to work the other colors off of my brush in preparation for me getting to that sun. So you can make your sky as yellow or as red as you want. I wanted mine a little bit more yellow, so I just added a little bit more yellow to my brush. You can have it as light or as dark as you want. If you wanted more red, you add more red, totally up to you. But the goal here is to try and get it lighter as it comes down that canvas. So you definitely want to use more white as you're coming down the sky. And it's okay when you do get to your hills to actually bump into them, because you'll be able to see your pencil outline underneath your paint. So it's okay if you bump into it. And you do want to keep using your brush left to right, as opposed to painting around the hills with the direction of the hills. This way, this is going to make it look a little bit more natural as opposed to painting in a line around the hills. So I'm going to just keep my brush going left to right, and that helps a more natural look to it. And then when you're ready to start popping on that sun, you have to make the determination of if you need to wash your brush or not. So for me, right now I'm just kind of blending my colors away. I think that I might rinse my brush a little bit, so that way I have a nice bright sun. But you can, if you don't have much paint on your brush, it's okay. So I just washed and dried my brush, and I'm going to pick up white paint to start that sun right in through there. And I'm going to bring it all the way down to my hills. And then once I've got that sun on there, I'm just going to pick up a little bit of yellow paint. I'm not going to pick up the other colors, and I'm just going to start to get that yellow paint to blend in with the white that's on there. So I want my sun to have like soft edges to it as opposed to a really firm edge. So if you can't accomplish it because your white dries too fast on you, you can always pick up a tiny bit more of the white and just get it to kind of blend in around those edges. And you know, when you're doing this, you can imagine as the sun is going down, all those little creatures in the night are going to start coming out. So, you know, have fun when you're painting. Painting's not just about what's happening on the canvas, it's about what's happening in your imagination too. So, you know, feel free to just, you know, enjoy the experience, have fun doing it. I want to cover this little area just a smudge more. I'm picking up just a little bit of red. It was a little bit too separated for me. So I just add a little bit more, and you can really just have fun with this. And then we are going to use this same brush for the next step. So once you get your beautiful sun on here, you can wash and dry this large brush and get ready for the next step. Oops. All right, so what we're going to be painting next is the top rocky hill. I'm going to be using my big brush, and the colors that I'm using are rust, red, yellow, and white. And my goal here is to make them darker at the top and lighter down at the bottom. Almost like maybe there's a canyon back there, like maybe the Grand Canyon or something. If you've ever been there, it's super cool. Or if you haven't been there, it's super cool. So I am going to start at the top and work my way down to the bottom. I am going to start with red and rust on my brush at the same time. And we want to hide our pencil mark. I'm going to be doing almost like a rubbing kind of technique, just kind of wiggling my brush a little bit. I'm going to get this top area, making sure I hide my pencil marks. Going to go all the way across. I'm using kind of a thick amount of paint right now. I don't wash my brush either, so maybe next time I go to pick up paint, I just pick up the rust. So this way I will have different shades or different colors on the hill, you know, on the top of the hill. And I'm using a good amount of paint, so it's going to stay wet, so I will have an easy time blending this top area once I start doing the rest of the hills. Now maybe I just pick up red. So I'm really just using rust and red at the top. And you know, if your hills end up looking like a little bit different shape than your pencil marks were, don't worry about it. As long as you get those pencil marks hidden, that's cool. And then what I'm going to start doing now is start picking up some yellow. So the yellow is going to help to start the lightening process coming down these hills. Right now the yellow is going too yellow for me, so I'm picking up yellow and red. I'm just having fun with these colors. And once I've got these coming down quite a bit, and you can see I'm kind of blending it in with that top area, but yet I'm still allowing it to be a different color, because I want there to be a variety of colors, and I want it to go from dark at the top to lighter down at the bottom. And you might end up having one side of the rock totally a different color or a different shade, which is exactly what's going to happen in nature. Nature provides us with a big spectrum of different colors. So now that I've got this color on here, maybe a little bit more over here on the right hand side, just to make sure this looks like it's deep enough, I'm going to start picking up white. So I do want to caution you though, when you go to start picking up white, if you have a ton of red on your brush, what might happen is it might go a little pink on you. So if that happens, just pick up a little bit of yellow. So right now I'm just with my dirty brush picking up some white paint, and I'm going to just kind of test it out over here, see what happens. And I do, again, want it to blend in with the color that's above it. So I am bringing it down to my pencil, but then I'm also kind of blending it up into that previous color as well. And I like this color. It's not too pink for me. So I'm just going to kind of keep rolling with it. I might add a little bit of yellow in a minute just so I can get a different color variation. But I do want this all to just kind of blend in with the stuff above it. So when I blend it into the stuff above it, I don't use a firm pressure on my brush. I'm just really lightly just kind of rubbing it in or mixing it in with the colors that are above it. I'm picking up now a little bit more red and yellow just to get this a little bit more vibrant coming up and through here. And then I've got this one last little area to the right, and you can see it's all different shades, which is awesome. This is what happens in nature. Just picked up some more yellow and white there. And this is kind of resembling to me, there's a place in Arizona called Monument Valley. This kind of looks like that. There's these really tall, huge rock formations up amongst this really cool desert land. So that's kind of what I'm imagining right now. And then we are going to use the same brush for the next step, but you're going to want to wash it and dry it and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to be doing for this step is we are painting the front rocky hill. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors I'm using are black, rust, red, and yellow. And I'm going to do the same thing that I did for this one with being dark at the top and light at the bottom. So I'm going to start with black and rust, but I have to caution you that black will very easily take over. it will overpower the other colors if you use too much. So you just need to use a very tiny, tiny bit. So I'm going to take my big brush. I'm just using a little tiny bit of black, and I'm putting some rust on my brush. This is where I'm going to start. I'm going to start with this color at the top of the hills, and then I'll get into my red and into my yellow. So I'm going to start the same exact way I did the first one, which is just kind of rubbing that brush up towards the top, giving myself this really cool uneven edge to these rocky hills, which is so cool. And we're going to be making our way down into, I think it's kind of like the valley floor of these particular hills. I just picked up a little bit of red so I can change the color a little bit as we're going here. So just again, getting this dark color on up at the top. It doesn't matter if you do exactly what your pencil mark told you to do, as long as you end up hiding that pencil mark. That's the only goal here. And I'm not using really thick paint, so this way it will, that black won't be too overpowering. And I am not probably going to pick up any more black at this point. I'm just going to use the remnants that are on my brush, and now I'm going to start picking up red and rust, and that way I'm going to end up with these great variations as I'm coming down the hill, getting it to blend in over here, making sure I get this all blended before it dries too much on me, because if it dries too much, it might be a little bit tough to blend, but you can always paint another layer on top of it if you need to. And again, I'm still kind of picking up the red and the rust right now. As soon as I get a large area of this, then I'll start using the yellow, but you can certainly adjust this to whatever color variation works for you or you like. Actually, I think I might pick up a tiny bit of black, add a little bit more dimension over here. You can have fun with it, but again, just be careful of that black. Make sure it doesn't overpower your canvas. As I'm working my way down here, I'm going to start picking up maybe a little bit of yellow. I totally feel like we're going down deep into this little either valley or canyon floor where all those little creatures are just going to come out at night. I know this is where they hide. They hide amongst all this little dark stuff down here. And just so you understand why we're doing this darker as it comes closer to us, because it's actually kind of being silhouetted by itself. The sun is dropping over there, so it's this hill is kind of, and these rocks are kind of casting their own shadows upon themselves. So that's why it becomes more of like a silhouette as you come farther away from the sun. And I'm just wrapping this up here, just still using kind of my red and yellow, and you can see that it definitely is darker up at the top than it is down at the bottom. And again, you can get this color variation to be, as mild or as strong of a contrast as you want, just as long as you can have that darkness up at the top and then some form of lighter shades down at the bottom. And then we are going to switch to our small brush. So once you get done doing your front hill here, you can put this large brush away in your water cup, and you can take out your small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to be doing in the next step is we're painting our birds. I'm going to be using my small brush, and I'm going to be using black paint. So I'm going to be imagining and painting these to resemble eagles, because that's what I associate as the predatory type bird that you're going to find out in the desert. You may want to paint a vulture or a falcon or whatever other predatory type birds that you can think of. But this is the one that I'm going to go for. I'm going to use just black paint so they look like they're in the silhouette. And how I'm going to do this, going to give you a couple of tips to control your lines. So you can take your small brush, you can take a drop of water, and you can use water to thin out your paint so it's almost like an ink consistency. That really helps to make small lines or skinny lines. And then another tip is you can take your brush and spin it on the side of your palette, and that's going to make it nice and pointy. And then the third, probably most important tip that I can give you is don't press hard. So just use a very light touch. You can always add more paint and you can always make the line thicker, but once it's there, it's really tough to take back. So just don't press hard. So the first line that I'm going to make is almost a horizontal line. It's going to be a little diagonal, and it's going to be about 2 inches long. And I'm going to kind of put it, if this is the center of my canvas, I'm going to probably put it about 1/4 of the way over and about halfway between the top of my canvas and my rocky hills. So here we go. I'm going to do a diagonal line that's about 2 inches long. And that's about how I'm going to start it. So the next line I'm going to do is another diagonal line, but it's going to be in this direction. So I want it to be on the left side, it's going to be about as long as my first line. So I can use my brush as a ruler. So I can take it and I can say, oh, this one's this long. So now I'm going to come just a little bit back behind the front edge, maybe about 1/4 of an inch, and just kind of eyeball where that is. And then I'm going to make this other diagonal line something like this. I want it about the same length. Now I'm going to do another one coming out of here that's a little bit shorter than this and at a little bit different of an angle. So instead of coming straight out like this, I'm going to put it maybe pointing towards the sun a little bit more. And I don't want it this long. I want it a little bit shorter. So I can do this and say, okay, well, what's a little bit shorter? Maybe right about here. And then I can make my line to connect those two. So now that I've done that, I have the structure, kind of like the base of it, or the framework of it. Now what I can do is I'm going to make my wings. So the wings are really, they're wide. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, from where this starts here, I'm going to come about half the distance between here and here. And that's how wide that one's going to be. And same thing with this one. It's going to be about half the distance. That's the width when it hits the body. And then when it goes to the tip is going to be pointier. So I'm going to take it from the tip. This is, again, just kind of giving me my framework for it. Something like that. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So I just put my hand in wet paint. Sorry about that. I'm a little distracted. So something like this. And you can point your tips. These don't have to be exactly the same shape. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put little feathers on the ends of my wings, so I can take my brush and just kind of almost like flick it out. They don't all have to be perfect. This is just giving you the illusion of these little feathers, something like this. And I'm going to do the same thing on this wing over here. So again, they don't have to be exactly the same as this one. You can really have fun with it. They are a little bit longer at the ends and shorter. The silhouette of them is a little bit shorter as you come towards the body. Then I'm just going to paint in those wings black. So now that I've got the makings of them, or the exterior silhouette, I can just paint it in black. Then I'm going to go ahead and do my tail. So my tail is kind of like a triangle. You want it skinnier here and wider here. So I'm just going to take my brush, and from there I'm just going to bring out a little bit of these wings, or the tail feathers, like that. And then the head, I just need a little beak, and the head to be a little bit thicker at the neck. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to leave that tip as skinny as it is right now, and I'm going to thicken the neck by just doing this. So I've thickened my neck, and now I'm going to put a tiny little beak that kind of comes down in like a curve, almost like a claw. So I'm going to sit here, and I'm just going to give it a little tiny beak coming down. That's all I'm going to do for that bird. If you want other little ones, you can use the same thought process, but you don't need as much detail. So I could have one like this, and then maybe this one's going to go like that, and then I just sit here, make myself some little wings I've got my tail feather coming off there and maybe a little head here. But when you do these smaller ones, clearly they don't have to have as much detail. I need to make my wings a little bit bigger because they're farther away. So you can have as many as you want. Maybe I'll do another little teeny tiny one over here. Sometimes doing the smaller ones, my hand gets in the way of the camera. Try not to, but because I have to concentrate a little bit harder. But it really kind of looks like a little airplane on the smaller ones. So you can maybe use that as your visual association. Make your little wings going in different directions, or make that little tail fling out. And that's all I'm going to do for those. So we are going to use the same brush for the next step, so you can wash it and dry it and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are painting our coyote silhouettes. So I'm going to use my small brush so I can make sure that I get my edge details correct. And I'm just going to use black paint. So how I'm going to teach you to do this is we're just going to start with some simple dots. Then we're going to connect those dots and we're just going to make some marks, and all of a sudden we're going to have 2 coyotes on our canvas. So I'm going to use my small brush and black paint again. It doesn't have to be watered down for this main section. So what you're going to do is you're going to come down to the center of the bottom of your canvas. So wherever you perceive the center to be, you're going to make yourself a little black mark. Then what you're going to do is you're going to come up about, I would say, 3 inches and make yourself another dot. Then you're going to go to the right of that, probably about 1.5 inches to 2 inches, and come up maybe about another inch. Then just go directly below that one and make yourself a dot below it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to connect this dot to here and this dot to here. What this is going to represent is the front side from the nose, from the top of the nose down to the bottom of the chest. So here I go. So when you connect these, you just need a very slight arc, and the arc is going to go towards each other. So this is my left coyote, this is my right coyote. So here we go. It doesn't have to start with a huge arc. You're just going to very subtly create yourself a little bit of an arc. So again, doesn't have to be a huge bump, just something very subtle. And then I'm going to do the same thing on this side. So I'm going to come down and make myself a subtle arcing motion. Okay. So then on this one, what we're going to do next is we're going to make a dot to the left of it. So this would be, if you were to take maybe the height of this and maybe pick, about 1/3 of it, that's about the width. So, and I tell you it that way because right now you may have different proportions than I do. Maybe yours are taller than mine, or you worked on a smaller canvas. So if you take this whole thing and say, oh, what's about 1/3 of that? And then go to the left. So for me, it's going to be about 1.5 inches to the left. And then same thing with this. If I take about 1/3 and then just go that way, that's going to be where I make that mark. Now we got to connect this top to here and this top to here, but you don't want to do it with a straight line. So I want to have a little bit of a curve, but you don't want a big huge bubble. So what this is going to represent is if the wolf is wolf, coyote, coyote, wolf. Are they the same thing? I don't know. I don't think so. I think they're different kinds of breeds of wild dog creatures, canines. So anyways, so this is going to be the top of the nose, and then it's going to represent like the back of the face and its back. That's why it gets wider at the bottom. So here I go. And we can always adjust this. we can always make areas bigger, but it's tough to make them smaller. So don't go too wide. So here I go. I've got to get my palette out of the way first. This is an important step. So I'm going to kind of give it a little bit of width at the top. And then I am just going to kind of come down in a little bit of a curve and then maybe kick it out just a little bit to meet that bottom mark. So something like that. I don't know how to describe this shape. It's kind of like a side or a cockeyed pointy oval kind of thing. So I'm going to do the same thing on here. So I'm going to just kind of give myself a little bit of what's going to be the nose at the top. And then I kind of bring it down without pushing it out too much. Kind of down like this. This is its back of its neck, and then maybe kind of curve it out a little bit here. And they're all going to be different shapes. So, you know, maybe your coyote eats a lot more than the next one. That's okay. And then what we're going to do is we are going to make the mouth that's open. So what I'm going to do, if this is going to be my nose, I'm going to come down just a little bit and just make myself a little bottom lip coming out. It's just opening. This is going to be where he's howling. And same thing on this one, he, she. It could be a he or a she. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to come down maybe about 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch. And I'm just going to make myself a little mouth coming out. So then the next mark that we're going to make is the eyebrow or eye socket, eyebrow bone, I guess is what I'm going to call it. So if you come almost directly over to the left from your mouth, right about here, what you're going to do is you're going to come bump it out to the left just a little bit, like 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch, and then just bring it down until it meets your regular line. I'm going to do the same thing over on the right side and come directly over from here. I'm going to do a little tiny horizontal line like that, something like that, and then just bring that line down so it meets my back. Okay? Now what we're going to do is we're going to make a couple of little ears. So behind or below my eyebrow bone, I need to make an ear. So how I know where that goes is I'm going to go from the mouth, and I'm just going to make an invisible diagonal line right to about here. And then I'm going to flick myself out a little ear. I'm going to do the same thing on the right hand side, on the right animal. So I'm going to go diagonal from here to right about here. And I'm going to go down and out and flick myself out a little ear. Now, hopefully, when you go to color this whole thing in with black, you're going to have a silhouette of a coyote. So once you get this all colored in, you might want to adjust certain things, like maybe your nose isn't big enough, or maybe you want your bottom lip to be bigger, or maybe your ear wants to be up a little bit. So just color it in and then step back. You know, put your head back or walk on the other side of the room and look and see if it looks like it's the silhouette of a coyote. And if it is, yippee, you've won. You haven't won a prize, but you've won something. But if it doesn't, then you just kind of keep manipulating your little marks. And, you know, this one to me looks pretty darn wide, but I think if I finagle its nose a little bit, I can make it look a little bit more realistic. I think I'm just gonna make this nose a little bit taller and do something like this. This one's pretty good too, but I think I want to square off this nose a little bit more. And just know that this is just meant to look like a nice simple silhouette. It doesn't have to be anything super fancy. It doesn't need to be exactly, you know, like every monster big coyote you've seen in the movies. If you like, I want the back to be a little bit bigger, so I just poofed out that a little bit. This shape looks pretty good to me on this one, and I think that's going to work for me. So we are going to use this small brush for the next step as well. So you're going to want to wash it and dry it and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're doing for the next step is we are painting our distant cactuses. Cactuses. I don't know if that's the correct plural word for cactuses. It could just be cactus, or it could be cacti. I don't know. Multiple cactuses in the distance is what we're painting. I call the cactuses, so I'm thinking that's the correct way to say it. So I'm using my small brush, and I'm going to be using the same colors that I used on the mountains. So this one, except for white, I'm not going to use white. This one I'm going to use rust, red, and yellow. And this one I'm going to use black, rust, red, and yellow. So I'm going to do these ones first. And then when I get to this one, I'll just pick up a little bit of black. I'm not going to wash my brush, so I am just going to pick up a little bit of yellow, rust, and red. And cactuses are really fun to paint because you don't have to worry about them being perfect. They can come in all different kinds of shapes. Some of them are round, some of them are pointy, some of them have like arms. I'm going to paint the ones that to me kind of resemble like the arms. And I'm not going to paint the little spiky things on them. I'm just giving nice simple silhouettes here. So I'm going to put maybe a couple of little tiny ones over here. I like to start with, you know, maybe some kind of vertical line and then just start painting these little arms off of it. And you can have them different heights. You can really have as many as you want. You can make them as light or as dark as you want. Putting them in the same colors as the hill is going to set it off in the distance. I'm going to put a couple up in here. And I definitely want them to be small so they really resemble that they're off in the distance. You can just have fun with them. I'm going to do one or two on here now, so I'm just picking up a tiny bit of black paint with whatever I already had on my brush, and I'm not even paying much attention to exactly what they're looking like. I'm just doing some vertical and horizontal little lines, and that's going to give you the impression that they are in fact what they are. So we are going to use this same brush. No, we're gonna switch to the medium brush for the next step. So once you get this done, you can put this small brush away, get your medium brush out, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we are painting our front or our main cactuses, or cacti, whatever you wanna call them. I'm using my medium brush and I'm gonna use just black paint. The only thing that I'm gonna really concentrate on doing is I want at least one on this side and one on this side to be taller than my back mountains. This is going to really give you great dimension on this, so it'll make them look really close to us. So I'm just going to put some black on my brush, and again, that trick holds true. You don't need watered down black paint in this step, but if you do want smaller pieces of your cactus, if you spin your brush in your paint on the side of your palette, that'll get it nice and pointy, or pointy enough for this particular step. You can use a ton of paint on this step too. We're not going to be painting over them, so use as much paint as you want. You don't have to necessarily start with a super straight top to bottom line for everyone. You could certainly start with something, you know, in this direction and then maybe have it come down, you know, and have it go up, whatever you want to do. I've got these close ones. I've got a couple of big ones that are going to be about an inch or so wide. So you definitely want them to be pretty wide at the bottom. And then just have fun. You just kind of keep forking off these little pieces. You can have them crossing over one another if you want to. You just have as much fun with it as you want. You can have little baby ones down below if you want to. Again, I'm not going to be doing the little prickly parts on the edge, but if you wanted to, you could certainly have, you know, those little spiny porcupine type prickly things on the edge. That's totally up to you. But again, I'm just having fun making these as many as I want. They can come off at little angles too. They don't always have to come off in like a 90-degree angle. Again, you can have tall, like just really skinny ones if you wanted to. There's some that just like almost fork off at the bottom. So really just have fun with this. You could make them like round too. There's lots of like round cactuses. There's all different kinds and species of cactuses, and I am not very versed in what they are. So I'm not even going to try to name different types of cactuses. I do know that there's many different ways that they look, but as far as naming them, I got nothing when it comes to that. So I'm just going to kind of put them in this particular shape, because to me this is a very typical looking shape that I can recollect in my brain. I'm going to have another big one over here. I definitely, like I said, I wanted to break that plane of that back mountain, and maybe I'll just get this one to come. Maybe I'll have one coming out over here. I like to have it thicker or wider at the bottom. That's going to resemble a natural like plant or tree, because it will be thicker as it's where it's growing out of the ground. But again, you can make these which way you would like. I'm just having fun with them, making some wide ones, making some thin ones. You can have some, again, that cross over one another, or some that just kind of poke out every now and again. So just make it into whatever you imagine it to be. And then we have one little step that we're going to do after this, and it's going to be with your small brush. So once you get your cactuses on here, you can take your small brush out and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are painting our grass. I'm going to use my small brush, and I'm going to use just black paint. So again, this is just meant to look like a silhouette. So really, the purpose for me in this painting of this grass is to kind of bring all of these elements together at the bottom. I don't need it to be too tall. I don't need it to be too wild. But I definitely want some pieces that are going to be taller, some shorter, just something that's going to kind of tie all these elements together at the bottom of my canvas. So I kind of go quick when I'm doing this type of step, and the reason why I go quick is so I don't think about it too hard. I want there to be some inconsistencies. I want my brush stroke to look different in all the areas, so it looks more natural. I would just, flick your paint. Don't really, think about it too hard, and that's going to help you to make it a little bit more natural looking. And then we do have one itty bitty step left to go, but I'm just going to make a couple of really tiny pieces of grass just so it really looks nice and natural. And the next step that we're going to do is going to be with this small brush as well. So you can, wash and dry the small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step to any painting, which is to sign it. So I'm going to be using my small brush. I'm going to be using black paint, but you can use whatever color you want, which is why I had you wash your brush. I usually sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right. I'm actually going to do this one in the bottom left. I do my initials, but you could certainly do your first name, you could do the date, you could do a little symbol. Whatever you want to use as your identifying mark is totally up to you. And that's going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoy the process. I hope you love your super cool, warm, hot, desert sunset-y oasis that you painted. And I hope you enjoyed your cookies, and I look forward to painting and eating cookies with you again sometime.